I'm Cindy, so I'm going to be leading us tonight, and I am an adjunct instructor here at MiraCosta. I am teaching right now human relations and business, and I've also taught business communications and a few other things. So I am very excited to be here talking to you about retail and starting in retail. And I'll kind of tell you a little bit about what my expertise would be in retail, why I'm here talking to you tonight. But I want to ask you guys a little trivia question to start. The first thing that I wanted to know is, what is the number one item that has been searched for in 2021 on Amazon? Take your guess in the chat, or you can shout it out if you have a guess on the number one search for product on Amazon. I do not see any guesses yet. Everybody give a guess if you can. The number one most searched for product on Amazon. Masks. That is a great guess.
I'll say gloves.
Gloves. That's another one. A lot of
hand cream. How about hand cream?
Hand cream, possibly. Alexa. That's a good one. Actually, the most searched for Amazon item so far this year is a fidget spinner, which is kind of interesting because sanitizer is another good guess from Tina. I kind of thought fidget spinners were over, but apparently not. But we'll talk a little more about Amazon searches later and what you can glean from that. A couple of other questions to start us off. What is the top selling category of retail products? What category would be like electronics or fashion or medicine? What is that?
Clothing.
Clothing is the guess. Seems like a pretty solid guess, and you are correct. Fashion and clothing is the top selling retail product. And what do you all think is the most profitable? There's a couple of individual products that are the most profitable retail meaning they have the highest margin. They bring home, after all their costs, they have the highest margin of profit. Jewelry is a guess. Do we have any other guesses there? One of them is something probably most of us have in our hand right now, or some of us might even be zooming in on it. That didn't give it away. Okay, so iPhones are the highest profit margin on a retail item. They make about a 41% margin on an iPhone. And it's closely followed, or not that close to it, by Monster Energy drinks, which is completely random. And the Monster Energy drink has a 26% margin. So, and they make about 2.1 billion. They sell about 2.1 billion in gross sales a year. So 26% of that, it's pretty good margin on energy drinks, right? So Monster does most of their business, I would imagine, in retail. So I'm going to pass the chat over to you, Daria, and I will just tell you a little bit about me and why I'm teaching this class and kind of what my expertise is. So as I mentioned, I teach here at MiraCosta. I've taught on and off the last 6 years, but this is the first year I've been teaching pretty consistently, and I absolutely love it. I love being part of this community. There's so many smart and driven students, and I love it in all areas of their life, which is really nice. Some of them are coming back to school after many years. Some of them are just starting. It's just a great mix. And I have owned my own marketing company for about 11 years, and we specialize in small business marketing. This is a picture here of myself with Tasha Borna Horvath, who is our assembly person. We were awarded Small Business of the Year in 2019, my company. And we're very proud of that because most of what we do is help businesses that don't have giant budgets and a lot of money to spend. So we have to get really creative. And we help launch retail products. We work a lot with restaurants, especially startup restaurants. We work a lot with grocery. So we have a lot of insights on how the grocery industry will choose their products. And I've also been a VP of marketing for a lot of large restaurant and hospitality groups. So kind of worked on that end of it. I really like the smaller businesses personally for me. It's just a lot more fun and I love the passion. And I went to school at Cal Poly SLO and also got my MBA up in San Francisco at USF, doing that while working full time. So I empathize with all of you who are trying to work and juggle family life and everything else and school. And I appreciate that you're here to hopefully get some more insight on whatever your retail business dream is. And I love working with small businesses, retailers, product launches, etc. They're all just amazing. Talk about what we're going to do today. Then I want to kind of find out information of what you would like to know. So we're going to just do some basic startup talk about starting a retail business. Where do you even start? How do you know what to sell? How do you sell it? What kind of platforms are out there for a small retailer? And then how do you level up? And leveling up to me means, how do I get my product into retail establishments, or how do I get products into my establishment? And what are the marketing elements that I need in order to do that? Also, what are some of the essentials? And then we have some links and exercises that you'll be able to do on your own. The wonderful thing about retail is that there are so many resources out there. And even for this presentation, I asked some of my friends and some local people just to tell me about their businesses. And I ended up really meeting some very cool local retailers just because I go into their shop and I say, hey, I'm doing this presentation. Would you talk to me for a few minutes about how you started up your company, where you started? And they would talk for an hour or two. So they love to share information. I think the spirit of small business is that people really love to partner and share. And I think we can all take advantage of that, especially in today's business climate. So I would like to stop for a moment and just find out from you what you're all interested in learning about tonight. And if you could, type into the chat, or you can tell me what type of retail business are you looking to do? Are you looking to sell a particular product? Are you looking to start a particular type of shop? Are you looking to do something online? If you can give me any specifics, I would sure appreciate it, because then it will help me tailor the talk a little bit more to what you all need tonight. Okay, children's boutique, that's fantastic. That's really helpful. We have a lot about clothing and fashion. Who else has one that they want to talk about? Okay, wholesale furniture, that's really cool. Skateboard decks, that's amazing. I love that. My kids make fun of me because I'm obsessed with Nigel Houston, who's a skateboarder. He's on Instagram with like 5 million followers. And I'm like, oh, Nigel did this. My kids are like, come on, Mom. My friend wants to buy a friend's gift shop. Perfect. Online retail, how to get this started, and should we use Amazon? We're going to talk about that, the pros and cons of Amazon. Online bridal boutique. Oh, very cool. And Greg, when you say online retail, what particular type of product are you thinking? Is it a product that would be based on volume, or a high cost product, or do you have something in mind, or just kind of researching? So durable casters, looking to sell online. Okay, great. Perfect. Anyway, if anyone else wants to add, feel free to do that. And then we'll go back to more online retail. Great. Well, we have a lot of online, and then kind of that idea about how to switch from online, and kind of when to switch online when you want to have that additional presence. But let's talk about just kind of starting up that business and what does that entail. So when you're starting your retail business, you obviously need to have a business plan and to start getting those specifics in place. But even before that, you're going to want to do a lot of soul searching about what kind of product you want to offer, and is your product unique? And in marketing, we love using acronyms. We come up with a million of them, and USP is one that you'll hear a lot, and that is your unique selling proposition. And what that means, USP, essentially is what is your differentiator of your product. If you're introducing a bottled water, what is going to be different about your bottled water? What is your USP for that particular bottled water? So what differentiator do you have? And what problem does the product solve? Because products are generally invented to make life better and solve a problem. So if you have a kids' clothing boutique, how are you going to compete with some of the bigger boutiques? Well, maybe you have kind of a special exchange policy where they can bring it in when they grow out of it and they get some sort of a credit or things like that. What are the problems that someone would have with a child and finding their clothing? Is it a budget issue? Is it a fit issue? Is it a, cleaning? How do are they durable? Those type of things. I've always said, I have a teenage boy. I would like to find a shoe manufacturer that makes indestructible teenage boy shoes. That would solve a problem for me. And no one has figured that out yet. So those are the type of things to think about when you have a product. Is it going to solve a problem? And if anybody watches, so show of hands, if you know how to do a hand in Zoom, or you can just say it in the chat, how many of you have seen the show Shark Tank? Yep, I see a few. Put your hand up or put it in the chat if you have. All right, I see a few that have. And Shark Tank is great. It's done for theater, so they want to make it very dramatic, and the sharks are always going to be rude. But it's really a pretty good indicator of how people should pitch a product and what the things that they should be thinking about when they're selling a product. So to me, it's a little bit like a business school when you watch that. It's a lot of really interesting questions and comments, and people often will go in there and not have a good handle on how to sell their product and what problem does that product solve. So thinking about that. And then who is your target market and how are you going to market to them? And the marketing part is somewhat secondary, but you have to really know what the market is. And so you should first of all know the industry that you're in. And luckily in this day and age that we live in, you can find out this information pretty easily. You can go online and figure out what is the size of your industry? What type of industry are you in? What is the size? Is this industry growing or shrinking? So I'll give you an example. We work with a natural beauty company, and that is an industry that's absolutely booming. You can go online and find out what's being searched for on Amazon. You can find out what's stocking the shelves at grocery stores, but you can also just pretty much Google what that industry is doing, and you'll see that it's been double-digit growth and then some. And so that is a great industry to be in, but what is the total size versus the overall beauty products industry? Is it better to have this niche and then natural products? And there's a saying that says there's riches in niches, and I'm a real believer in that. I don't think coming out and saying, we're going to make lotion. We're making lotion. That's our product. What type of lotion? What problem does it solve? How is it different from the Lubriderm lotion that's sitting on my counter? So figuring out what is your niche there and what problem does it solve? And my example really is with my marketing company. I've met a lot of people that say, I have a marketing company and we do marketing. We can do anything. Just call us. We'll do whatever. That sometimes when you do everything, you do nothing well. And so for us, our niche has really been the restaurant and retail industry, and especially a certain size. For restaurants, we tell people we work with restaurants that are 20 units or less. And our ideal size is anywhere between 3 units and 20 units, meaning they're getting big enough to start growing and franchising, but they're not big enough to have a full marketing department in-house. And so that's kind of our sweet spot. So you should know that in terms of your target customer. If you're selling skateboard decks, is your skateboard deck meant for the teenagers, the up and coming skaters? Or is it something that is going to appeal to maybe the OG skateboarders who have been around for a while? Or is it really brand driven? And we're going to talk about that in a minute. So you kind of have to understand who your audience is, and saying my audience is everyone generally is not going to cut it. If you're like Tina, you're selling furniture wholesale, you really have to know what the market is. Are you an IKEA? Or are you a Bow Concepts? There are two ends of the spectrum. Do you want a $12,000 chair, or do you want a $600 chair that you have to put together, or a $200 chair? So understanding, looking at the touch points in your industry, who's selling what, and figuring out which of those niches that you fall into. And then what are the trends in your industry? Is it growing or shrinking? You don't want to be part of a shrinking industry, and there are a lot of industries that are shrinking. In the restaurant industry, the high-end chain restaurants are struggling because people want a little healthier. They want fast casual. They want neighborhood. There's a lot of things that are not a lot of needs that are not being met by some of these bigger behemoth restaurants. And so they're struggling. The family restaurants like Chili's and TGI Fridays, there's local restaurants that can do that better. So that's a shrinking segment of the market. So you probably wouldn't want to enter that particular segment. So looking at your target market is really important in those trends. And then if you take that next step, you can actually do some market research. And there's really two kinds of market research. There's primary research and there's secondary research. So the primary research is information that you are going to gather yourself. So if you want to open a retailer, let's say a boutique or something like that, go to your area and walk around and talk to other store owners. And that's primary research. You're getting that information yourself, or create a survey and send it out to the people that you know. Let's say you're a personal trainer and you work for a gym and you're thinking about going out on your own and creating a new gym. Maybe you survey every one of your clients and see what they would want and what they would pay. So that's primary research. Now, secondary research is probably going to be easier to do initially, and that involves going to secondary sources. You can go online, you can Google things like I was talking about in terms of your market. You can also look at population size and income. So if you want to open a boutique in Del Mar, it's going to be a very different demographic than if you open a boutique in, let's say, Escondido. So you want to look at those populations. You can easily get that information. What is the household income average? How many families with children are there, for example? Or for the furniture, it would be like, how many people move new into this area every year? That's a really great statistic because you can get a sense of what the market is for people that might be buying furniture. And so, and Greg, tell me what casters are used for, because is it something in automobiles?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Casters and wheels are used on anything that moves around as equipment.
Okay.
For example, I sell Rubbermaid, all their casters and wheels.
Oh, cool.
It could be any industry from furniture to moving airplane parts. So my company, we sell it all, but we don't have any kind of online retail presence. And that's what we're considering.
Okay, cool. So that would be a little more global perspective, especially if you're online. And really online opens up any business to be.
It is global, but we want to try like a test market for North America.
Okay. So that's where secondary research can really come in handy to find out. And then pricing, we're going to talk about that in a sec, but understanding how you can price competitively and still make money, that's really difficult. Are you a product that works on volume? A new car is not going to be a volume product. It's going to be based on the price of that car. But if you're selling widgets, if you're selling fidget spinners, you got to sell a lot of them. So how do you get that volume and make sure that you can still make money? And if you can't, at a certain price point, then maybe something with your manufacturing process is off, or maybe you just don't have the right product. And then most importantly, what am I passionate about? Because if it's not something that you love and you feel that passion for, you're not going to enjoy doing it. Being an entrepreneur, starting up a company is very difficult and challenging. And you're going to have years where you feel like, why did I do this? I could be going to my 9-to-5 job every day and, clocking out or putting it away at night and not thinking about it. And instead I'm on the computer trying to email buyers or come up with an investor packet or doing all these things. It's a lot. And then you have those days where you just absolutely love life because you enjoy so much what you're doing. And so hopefully it's going to be something that interests you to that level where the work, what is that saying? I always forget it. It's like, if you do what you love, it won't feel like work. And I don't agree with that. It always feels like work. It just sometimes feels like more fun work than other times. So you want to pick something that you enjoy. So speaking of questions to ask, if any of you have ever taken a marketing class, you probably have heard about the 4 Ps. They've been around since the beginning of time. And they actually are still quite applicable today. So a lot of these things that we have, these little fallback kind of sayings. Some of them get outdated, but the 4Ps are really important. So that's what it calls down to for the things that you're going to sell. What products do you sell? How many product lines do you have? You know, how much inventory can you carry? Things like that. So what are your products? You know, relationships with suppliers, et cetera. And then again, the problem that this product will solve. And then any kind of proprietary features that might give you a competitive advantage. Is it something that you need to look at a patent or some sort of a trademark? That's something that, again, we'll talk a little bit about the SBA and SCORE, but they can help you a lot with that sort of thing if you feel you have a product. And those of you who have seen Shark Tank, you know this happens. They get up there, they're talking about this product, and I'm just stressed because I know it's coming. They're like, this is great. This technology is amazing. Do you have a patent? And then the person goes, no. And all the sharks go, we're out. And you're like, no. So, you know, that's important to think about if you feel that you have something that is proprietary. And then pricing. You can do a fee service. Subscription services are great. We're going to talk a little bit about those in terms of how that might apply to a certain type of product. You know, are you on the low, mid, or high end of your segment? And when you're selling things, I would think that if you're selling, for example, casters, you're either going to have to be a low price leader or you're going to have a differentiation of why you're priced higher, because it seems like it would be a pretty apples to apples comparison.
Exactly.
Versus something like furniture, where it's going to have a look and a design that might be a different selling proposition. And then how can you price? You can price, there's a couple different pricing models, but one of them is cost plus. That's kind of a simple model. It costs me $1 to make, and I want to make a 30% margin, so I'm going to charge $1.30. But you can also charge on perceived value, and that happens in more high-end industries. So you'll see that like in the wine industry, where you'll create a persona and a brand, and then you'll price your wine accordingly. And fashion is famous for that, because you know it's the same jeans in terms of how they look and feel, but some of the jeans go for $200 versus $25, $50, and that's all based on the brand and the perceived value. One example that I've been thinking of a lot lately, because I see it everywhere. How many of you have had Topo Chico water? Or have you seen the Topo Chico? It's the yellow with the red cursive. It's really popular right now. Matt says he has seen it.
Have not seen it.
It's kind of the cool, trendy water. And essentially it's sparkling water. But it's priced about 3 times as much as like the Sparklets, because they have this cool brand. And I was just driving tonight by the Crack Shack, which is in Encinitas. They have this outdoor patio, and I noticed like, oh, they have these new umbrellas. Yeah, they're all Topo Chico umbrellas. Like they're giving their umbrellas.
That's smart.
Restaurants. So, you can put that premium on a brand if it has a perceived value. And then place is really important in terms of where you're going to sell. We're going to talk a lot about that, but do you have barriers of entry that's going to stop you from being in a certain place? Is there a high production cost? Do you need a production facility? Do you have challenges with brand recognition? Are you in a segment in the industry where there's a lot of dominant brands? Electronics would be a good example of that, because Apple dominates the market, and then there's a few other carriers, but manufacturers, but that probably wouldn't be an easy industry to break into with a new type of smartphone. So you're going to want to look at those barriers of entry. Do you have specific products that might have a tariff or a quota? For example, we were talked with a business that created their first business importing products from Guatemala, and they sold the products online, but then they started facing some tariffs and some different things that were an issue for them, so they had to discontinue it. So being aware of that kind of thing in terms of the place that you're going to sell and the price, and things like unionization, et cetera. Are there labor costs that may go up significantly? Are there changes that are going to happen? As we know, in California, the minimum wage is going up. The federal minimum wage also may increase. So you need to kind of build that into your business planning. It's a ton of stuff to think about. And then promotion. To me, promotion is kind of that almost an afterthought. It shouldn't be, but we'll talk about that. We're going to look at business planning as it relates to creating the first steps. But these are really the 4 things that need to be on your mind and how those are going to come together to help you understand what you're selling and how to sell it. So let's look at where you want to sell your product. So there's online only, brick and mortar, and both, or sometimes that's referred to as an omni-channel strategy. And online is great because it allows you to lower your startup costs. And there's a lot of great things about being online. The less great thing is right now, e-commerce accounts for about 16% of sales from a retail standpoint. Now, in fashion, e-commerce accounts for about 70% of purchases. And we saw that earlier, it's the highest selling retail product, but 70% of those purchases are online. And the reason for that, most people will say it has the advantage of being a 24/7 shop. And if you have a product like that, where people are buying it at night, maybe you're selling to busy executives, and so they're not going to come into a shop. Or the people that would buy your product are national, so it does increase your market size. But also something like a bridal boutique, like Lupe is talking about, you have to think about, okay, if I'm selling this online, what are my policies going to be for returns? How are they going to fit? Is there a cool system we can use to, upload your photo and make that happen, etc. So there are some challenges, but fashion is an industry that's already pretty entrenched in retail. And then, so 16% right now, but in the year 2040, it's going to be 95%. 95% e-commerce online. So that's where the world is going. And you can see it even when you look at shopping malls. There's not the malls of old, of my heyday in high school, where you could go down to the mall and get a hot dog on a stick and meet your friends and go shop at, Wet Seal or one of those. It's really become these outdoor kind of lifestyle centers where you might have a restaurant and a coffee shop intertwined with the retail. Maybe there's someone playing music, etc. It's more of an experiential feeling. And the reason for that is because people are not coming out to spend a day necessarily shopping, but they'll go meet a friend for coffee, or they'll go do some yoga, and then maybe they'll pop into that shop next door, etc. So it's a different type of shopping going on than it was used to. Chauncey, I agree. Those were the good times. They recreated that in Stranger Things, if anyone saw it. And it was like such a great scene when they first went into the mall. I loved it. So yes, e-commerce is where it's at. And, but 80% of companies said that they're investing in an omni-channel experience. And a lot of that is because when you have a brick and mortar shop, depending on what your product is, you do have that experiential factor. It's hands-on. It builds your brand. A lot of people, if you're going to buy a mattress, want to come in and sit on the mattress. There's companies now like Purple and Clover that are doing it all through e-commerce, which I think is amazing. I never would have thought that would fly, but it is, and it's convenient, and people really like it. So the omni-channel is really the way to go if you can do it. And there's a saying that's kind of been sweeping the world in retail again, because we love our acronyms. The saying is BOPIS, BOPIS, and it became very fashionable during COVID. And all it means is buy online, pick up in store. So kind of like curbside, but people want to buy it, but they want it that day. So they might just swing by the store and then you bring it out to them. And it's kind of a cool way to do it. And maybe someone will pop in your store and buy something else, but it's just easy and convenient. And so the trend of BOPIS, I think 42% of retail businesses said they plan to continue it even after COVID, because it really opened up a different world for them in terms of different way to sell. All right, so let's look at a couple more things on in terms of where to sell. Actually, I have a worksheet that we can look at later too that talks about real estate and how you can find real estate if you want to do the brick and mortar. So, but we're going to talk a little bit more today about online. And the first thing that we're going to, go through in terms of specifics. Now, this doesn't apply only to online. It applies to online and brick and mortar. And this is about your sales platform. So for small retail, you're going to need a sales platform. And really what that means is how you sell. What does your website look like? What is the back end? How do these systems talk to each other? So if you're selling a volume product, you're going to need your website to interact with your inventory management, et cetera. All these things have to work together. And there's a few sales platforms that will help you mostly with the front end. And this is kind of a little chart. Most of my retail businesses that I work with love Shopify. They think it's great because it is very scalable. So it starts off with, it can help you build a website, et cetera. You can scale up. Their tech support is really good. They'll help you. It's kind of a good DIY, but then you can pay to add more support and services to Shopify. So that's the downside. A lot of businesses use Wix, and Wix is kind of all about the website. So if you have a product that you want to create a really nice website for, Wix is great for that. You can do templates, you can do it yourself, which is really nice. And they also have the sales tools as well, the shopping cart feature, etc. And then Squarespace, kind of the same thing. They have good tech support, but they also, we're going to talk about other things like payment options and integrating that. And Squarespace is not as good with that in terms of how they integrate. A lot of these platforms want to keep everything within their platform. And so they don't share well with other types of technology. And when that happens, you're not always getting the best of the market in every single one of the areas that you need. And we'll talk about that. We're going to look at point of sale in a second. So you need to create a website. Square is a great free or low cost way to create a website. So if you have a product you're going to sell there, it's really nice to set up, and you can load up your products, and it's easy in terms of what they're going to charge you. It doesn't go up when you add different types of products. So they don't have a lot of shipping support and customer service. So like if you use Shopify, you can actually use them as your customer service, where they'll handle your returns, et cetera, right online, which is nice. So those are a couple of sales platforms to consider. And one thing that almost all of my retailers said is ask around, because other retailers will tell you what they're using to sell their products online and what they like or don't like. And then also, beyond the sales platforms, you also have what's called point of sale or POS systems. And so when you have a program like Spotify or Square, you can use that as your point of sale system. So what that means is when someone comes into a store, you might have an iPad or a computer or register, and that's how you're ringing up their order. So ideally, you would integrate on your Shopify. People could order online on your Shopify, and then they could come to your store, buy something on your Shopify. It works really well for omni-channel. Now, there's a few point of sale systems that are very specific. Like Toast is a great point of sale system for restaurants. What that does really well is dynamic menu pricing. They can have an online ordering app integration. So you could integrate your Toast with Uber Eats. So when someone makes an order on Uber Eats, it goes right into your point of sale system. So that's valuable integration. So that's where, depending on the type of industry you're in, you're going to want to pick the point of sale that's best for that industry. So it's not always going to be the same thing that you build your website on. Clover is an example of a point of sale system that works really well on iPads in your store. It also integrates super easily with Shopify for the website and the back end. And it works well. Like, let's say you have a loyalty program and you want to integrate that in with your point of sale. It makes it very easy to do. So you'll want to look at how those systems integrate and what works best for all of the needs that you might have. Some of them, even you can do email right off the system, and that's kind of nice too. And this website, Fit Small Business, I'm gonna have a link at the end. They compare all these, and it's a really nice way to see what systems that you might use for what particular business you have. And then you also have to consider payment processing. How are you going to take credit cards, or how are you going to take Apple Pay, or any of those systems that you're going to want to use? And in most of the larger point of sale system, that process is built in, which is great. But you have to consider, what is the fee structure of using credit cards? What do you want your systems to be? Do you want to take all the cards, etc.? So that's something that you're really going to want to think about on the outset with your business, in terms of how are you going to run transactions and how are you going to process payment. And if you're online, that might look very different than in-store. And I feel like I've seen more and more retailers that are taking Venmo, which I think is really cool. Like my hairdresser, they take Venmo now. And so just any of those electronic platforms that you can integrate is probably a good idea for future sales. Unless you're really an IT person, it's not as exciting a part of creating your business. But on the other hand, it's really, really important, because once you lock into a sales platform, a website, and a point of sale system, it's really challenging to change. And so we want to make sure that we do our research from the outset. Okay, so let's look at some of the different online marketplaces that are out there. And are there any of these that you all have not heard of? You can say it or tell me in the chat.
The bottom.
What was the other one?
For me, it would be the bottom two.
Grailed and Alibaba, yes. So Grailed is really cool. It's a menswear site. And so they do fashion, but it's only for men. And it's kind of a new and up and coming platform, but it's really growing fast. So that's neat. And then Alibaba is the Amazon of China. I think it's the second or third largest sales platform. And so if you end up going global at some point with your product, you're going to want to be part of Alibaba, because it's a pretty major platform. So that's just a little bit of an example. You know, Walmart is really setting itself up to compete with Amazon. And so that's something to keep an eye on. But let's talk about selling on Amazon. So the example that I would give you is that I have a friend who owns several companies, and they have all grown very organically. They have a restaurant that they own, a pizza place in Encinitas. And then they have a coffee company that is based up in Oceanside, and they sell retail, but most of their business comes from Amazon. And then they also have a bone broth company called Lono Life, and they sell on in grocery, but also on Amazon. So they're using that omni-channel approach, where they started with retail, but they've really moved a lot of their product onto Amazon. But what she said is it's very nice, because people will see their product in a certain spot and they'll remember it, or they'll buy it on Amazon, but then they'll realize they can get it locally, or they'll see it at the grocery store and say, oh yeah, I had that. So they all kind of work together in synergy. Now she has become, over the last 10, 15 years, a top seller on Amazon. So she actually goes up to the conferences. She gets all of the proprietary Amazon research. So they send her sales trends, etc., on everything that is happening on Amazon. And it's pretty cool. But it takes a long time to get there. And when she started in Amazon, they were much less big than they were now. And so her advice really is, you can't be on Amazon unless you have the money to put into it, because it can really be a loss leader to start. The cost structure in Amazon is very complicated, but I will tell you that the average cost, depending on the type of product, you're going to pay about a 6 to 25% commission. And that's a really high number when you consider most product margins are probably less than 20. So you could be selling everything in Amazon at a loss. Okay, well, maybe that's a strategy. Is it worth it to you to have it be a money loser because you're going to get the volume, or you're going to direct those people then to your own website, and then maybe they're going to buy it from you directly. Because I know for me, I've found products on Amazon and then I'll end up going directly to the manufacturer. But what they've done to become a top seller is they spend a lot of money on the platform. They give discounts. So you can see here, 40% off your first subscription order. And for her, the subscription-based model has worked really well. So if you have a product where people are going to use it over and over, you can get a subscription going, and that's something that can then recur. And we've all seen that on Amazon, right? I'm assuming everyone knows what that is. And so they'll give the discounts, and when they give those discounts, it's not Amazon paying for it, because when Amazon charges a sales fee, they're always going to charge you on the full retail price. So if you're offering a 40% discount for someone to try your product, you're still going to pay your 25% commission on the full price. So it becomes pretty costly to be on Amazon, but it's a really important platform. And depending on your type of product, if you're selling things like accessories for an Amazon device, so let's say you're selling a plug for a Kindle or something, or a case for a Kindle, they're going to charge you 45% commission on that, because you're essentially making your money off of their product. So that can be challenging. Fashion, I think, is a little bit less, but that's another hotly competitive area on Amazon. So one of the things that my friend recommended is hiring an Amazon expert. And there are a lot of consulting companies out there that make their money being experts on Amazon. And we had a product that we put on Amazon maybe 2-3 years ago, and they do CBD-based wellness products. And so that's a hot category on Amazon. And so we ended up hiring these experts to figure out, they do all of the SEO, they do all of the copywriting, they figure out the pricing, etc. And that was a good way to go, but it just tells you that you have to be at a certain size to make that happen, and to pay the money for that to happen. So navigating Amazon on your own as a small business person is not something that I would recommend. I think you would end up losing money in the end if you didn't have that strategy and also that expertise. How do I get reviews on my product? Because that's going to push it up in the feed. How do I offer discounts? What are the SEO, the keywords? For the CBD, what was really cool is they gave us this whole report about people were looking for CBD plus herbal ingredients. They wanted to see CBD that includes calendula or lavender or things like that in conjunction with the other products. So it helped us tailor those product descriptions exactly to what people were searching for. And what people are searching for on Amazon. So this is a pretty easy thing to Google. When you become a top seller, you get a little more detailed information. But the top searches, as we mentioned, fidget toys, air fryer is a big one right now, PS5, and candy. So talk about the odd mashup of items that people are looking for on Amazon. But the best thing you could do is go on and search your product and see what comes up and see how many searches are going on. And then you can get a little more granular. If you're inventing a new type of lollipop, you can certainly look at lollipop searches and exactly do a description of exactly what you think your unique selling proposition is. And you can see who else is on there saying that. So there's 5 growth areas in Amazon that I was just reading about. And these are all sort of retail product related. And the first one being CBD. One of the top 10 searches, I think was a year or 2 ago on Amazon was CBD for pets. So any kind of pet product is going to be popular. And when you combine a pet product, if you could do a pet fidget spinner, I'm sure that would be a top seller on Amazon. But it's that's a big growth category. Another one is eco-friendly, which is funny to me. Like everyone right now wants eco-friendly cleaning products. Now, when COVID started, everyone threw away their eco-friendly cleaning products and bought the most, horrible bacterial everything, right? We all did it. We wiped down everything. Well, now there's kind of a swing back to looking for the eco-friendly. And I think for like furniture as well, that's something people are looking for, that eco-friendly. Like, you really didn't even know that your mattress was toxic to you until we started seeing these eco-friendly products. So it's very interesting how a whole category can shift based on that. And then also natural skincare and cosmetics. That's a big growth area for any of you that are thinking of that. Specialty teas, and I think that probably would move into like CBD and eco-friendly too. And then diet fads. So any kind of diet product, whether it be exercise equipment or just individual type of diet products. Those are 5 areas in Amazon that really are doing well. But any of the products that you are all talking about can be sold on Amazon. It's just a matter of how many other products are on there. How are you going to differentiate? And do you have a strategy as a retailer to use Amazon as one tool in your toolkit? Because there's very few businesses that can succeed only selling on Amazon. They are out there, but typically it's kind of one prong of like that 3-prong strategy of you're going to sell on Amazon, you're going to have your own website to sell, and then you're going to have a retail presence of some sort. But for those of you that are thinking things like clothing boutiques, Amazon is a great way to add to that if you can get on there and think about selling there as well. It's just another channel that's open to you. So do you have any questions about Amazon or any kind of questions, comments, considerations about selling there? Okay, well, you can ask at the end if anyone thinks of anything else there. We're going to talk a little bit about Etsy, and that is a pretty niche market. But did any of you attend the Etsy? I think we had an Etsy workshop last week, right? Or last night? Were any of you there as well?
Yes, I attended it.
Yeah, I think a couple of people were.
Who was that?
Hi, I'm Kat.
Oh, hi, Kat. What is your product, if you're comfortable saying? Not to put you on the
So
spot.
right now, I wasn't the one who hosted the workshop yesterday, but I'm trying to open an Etsy shop, and I'm trying to aim between t-shirts, stickers, mugs, planners. So it's an assorted of designs. Basically making original designs that will be printed onto these things through screen printing, sublimation, and vinyl.
Very cool. That sounds like a perfect product for Etsy. That's great. Well, and I know she did a deeper dive, so I'm going to just keep it light on Etsy because we don't have a ton of experience on Etsy, but I will say I buy everything for my house on Etsy. I love it as a platform. They have the coolest stuff, and they're a little bit more particular about what they carry in terms of Etsy. It's a little more one of a kind. It's not necessarily bulk merchandise. And the quality has to be high. They put a lot of stock and weight into those reviews, and people do read them. The customer service, in my experience on Etsy, is a much higher level than you would find, let's say, on Amazon or other platforms. And the seller profile and all of that is really focused in on that. They verify their vintage. If you're saying something's vintage, you have to verify it, things like that. It's just really focused on that higher quality. And establishing a presence off of Etsy is usually critical before you're selling on Etsy. Building your name and seller profile. And Etsy charges a number of fees, and I'm not an expert in this, but they generally will charge a fee to list, a transaction fee, and then a payment fee if you're making your payment through them, which most people do. So I don't really know what their percentages are. I've seen anything from 5 to 20%. I think it's probably on the lower level because they're dealing with smaller businesses. I don't know if they talked about that last night in terms of an average cost for selling on Etsy. You guys remember? But, oops, sorry.
I don't recall if they did.
Okay. And then setting up your tax number, etc. A lot of people just go straight into Etsy and they don't think about those kind of things because it's easy to sell. So make sure that you're considering all those tax implications, etc. And there's a blog, I think I have a link at the end. It's called wonderlabel.com. And they have a lot of information about Etsy, how to sell on Etsy, how to set up your Etsy store, etc. So if you want to, if you're on Etsy, you're probably a DIYer to start. And so this is a great way to DIY your way into figuring out Etsy. And I had a woman in my class this summer who was making these really cool resin coasters and different things. And she just set up on Etsy, and it's really cool. So if you haven't been on Etsy, has anybody not been on Etsy? All right, we gotta get you on Etsy because it is really cool. They have, like, Greg, if you have a favorite musician, you can type in that musician's name and you'll find they'll have like a coffee mug and those candles that they use like in church. They have those like rock stars on them. Everything you can think of, people are creating. But they also have, you can get steel work and furniture, and it just really runs the gamut, and it's all beautiful, mostly handmade merchandise. So I think it's a great platform for people that are makers. So let's say you have your product set up on Amazon, on Etsy, or maybe even Amazon, but you also really want to get into retail. Either you're starting a retail shop and you're trying to figure that out, or you want to partner with some retail because you don't necessarily have the overhead to start. And so I have a couple examples of people that I know in the retail industry, and Aloha Bungalow is a really cool little shop down in Acadia, and they sell handcrafted goods, and they started off selling online only, and then they had lived in Redondo Beach, and an opportunity came up to take over a small retail location, and they did. And what they found is having that retail location really helped with their online sales because people wanted to know that they had that legitimacy of they could go there and make an exchange if they wanted, or they just knew they, it's almost like you have recourse to find them if something goes wrong. But they also loved this idea that, yeah, we have this boutique in Redondo Beach. Oh, well, that's cool. This must be a cool store to shop at. And then they found this other shop in Acadia, and they couldn't really do the whole rent themselves necessarily. And so they partnered with a coffee vendor. And so now they have a coffee cart in front. And then they also work with a yoga studio to offer yoga. They have a little back patio. So they're doing all these things at once to be able to make their brick and mortar presence work. They also use it as a bit of a warehouse for their items. And so I think that's really cool when you can have that brick and mortar, but use it for multi-purposes. And there's a lot of people right now that want to partner. So consider, a small area or getting your products into some of these smaller boutiques. They stock almost all locally made things at Aloha Bungalow, and that's worked out really well for Brian and Emily. And then this is Threadspun, another local boutique in Acadia. And Heidi is the owner. She is really cool because she does only fair trade and mostly women created products. And she buys from a lot of countries that don't necessarily have fair trade. So she does buying trips there, and she has really made her business a social mission. She does a lot of pop-ups. So she'll have a food truck in to be serving food. And there was a guy recently that she told me about that just moved from Kenya, and he started a Kenyan food truck. So she brought him in to serve the food, and then she got a band from Kenya also to play, and had this really nice synergy and showcase products from Kenya. And so those type of pop-ups are really great. And if we're talking about like mat and skateboard decks, you can only imagine what sort of pop-ups and events and things you could do with skateboarding. Obviously, it's kind of any action sports product is the sky's the limit in terms of the partnerships that you can create. And a business like Seaweed and Gravel, again, that's a men's clothing store, and they cater to surfers and bikers, hence the name is Seaweed and Gravel. But they do a lot of makers markets, and they have brands within, let's say, the surf industry that they really showcase. Local events are a great place to kind of get that retail information out there. Like maybe if you're selling furniture, there's a local event and you could provide the seating for it and showcase your products, that sort of thing, to be able to get that retail presence out there. And then farmers markets are a great place to start if you have a food product or a fashion product. There's a ton of them in San Diego. They go year round. They're a pretty low cost of entry to start there. And we have a couple clients that started a meal delivery business, and they started it by sampling and selling their meals at farmers markets. And then they would get people to sign up on a subscription basis. There's a couple juice places in San Diego that have started at farmers markets. There's people that do everything from soaps to, handboards for surfing, all sorts of things. They can start off at the farmers market, develop that following, and then take it larger to do their own retail. So when we talk about brick and mortar, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to have your own location and take on that real estate and take on that overhead. It just means that you want to get your product physically out somewhere where people can see it and interact with it. And that will help you build your brand. So it's really important to think about what kind of presence, even if you're selling all online, if you have that online bridal boutique, let's say, or a kids clothing boutique, you can still go out and showcase those products in places. Maybe there's a pop-up at One Paseo in Del Mar where they're doing, bridal food tasting, and maybe you'll provide the fashions for that or some of the accessories, that kind of thing. So it's all about making those connections. And I think I said, businesses are so open these days, especially small businesses. People want to help each other and they really want each other to succeed. And it's a hard landscape. So sometimes it's just asking the question that helps to make things work. All right, so another question that comes up a lot with retail is how to get into places like grocery stores, liquor stores, larger big box stores, that kind of thing. How do you get on shelves? Because that would really be the next step of really leveling up. And if you have a niche product, it could be leveling up to maybe a auto parts store, or leveling up to a larger clothing retailer. I'm going to give you from a grocery point of view, and we work with a lot of grocery stores, and they have a lot of different products from food and beverage to natural products for beauty and vitamins, etc. So Sylvia is the director of wellness at Lazy Acres, which is a local kind of a natural market. They've been our client for about 6 years, and they have a sister company called Bristol Farms, and we work with Bristol as well, and they're really high end. But Lazy has a lot of really cool, unique products, and I always just kind of assume that people just show up at the store and say, I have this product, can you put it in the store? And they say, sure. But that's not really the way it works in retail. So Sylvia gave me a lot of fantastic ideas and suggestions about getting your products featured. And this can apply not just to grocery, but probably any larger retailer has the same parameters. And so one way to find out who the buyer is, and contact them directly, send them an email, send them samples. And she said, this is really our least favorite way to be contacted. We don't want people reaching out to us really unsolicited unless their product is so different and unique that we just are not going to understand it unless we get this sample. But if you're selling a natural face cream, they already carry 20 at Lazy Acres, so you're probably not going to have something that is going to be unique enough to really get the attention of a buyer in that fashion. So that's probably not the way to go about it. There are local brokerages and reps, and that is their job to work with certain stores to get products on the shelf. And again, this is why I'm saying leveling up, because generally you're not going to start off with your first product and get it into grocery because it costs money to make money. So these vendors are great, these brokerages, because they understand the process. And I think 3 or 4 times Sylvia said to me in our conversation, we don't want to handhold, we're busy. We don't want to explain to people what they have to do to get into our stores. These reps know the process, they're going to explain the process to you. And what they're going to explain is new vendor requirements, and that's really important. And I'll give you an example of some vendor requirements that you might come across when you're trying to go into these larger stores. Generally, they want an opening order discount. So the first order that they make, they either want it free, half off, they want a deep discount because they're going and trying it for the first time. So that would be part of the deal. They would want testers and samples for their staff members. So if you have a food product, they want their staff to know what that is. They would want to figure out how you can educate their staff. Maybe you have an education program of some sort. They would want a product guarantee that you're going to pay for the returns. They would give them full credit for the returns, a certain promotional commitment, and then things like a pretty high bar of liability insurance. So if somebody eats one of your frozen chicken wings and they choke on it and die, you're going to have to take on that liability. That's a really gruesome example, but it's the only one that came to my head. In any case, it's kind of working with a larger retailer reminds me of when I worked in the travel industry, we would always do deals with Disney. And when you do a deal with Disney, Disney always does the contract. And the contract is usually about 30 pages. And it's almost 95% beneficial only to Disney. And when you say, well, wait, I'm indemnifying you if anything happens. Why don't you indemnify me if anything happens? And they say, no. And if you don't like it, you don't have to work with us, but we're Disney. And unfortunately, that's the way of the world with some of these larger retailers. They kind of ask you for everything in order to partner with them. That being said, some of the smaller grocery and retailers don't necessarily have all of those requirements, but just be prepared that they're going to ask you for a lot, and you're going to need to provide that in order to get your product into stores. There is a really cool tool called RangeMe.com, and it is a tool that retailers use to source products, and you can put your product on there. We did it for the CBD company that we worked with, and you can do product description, all the sell sheets, etc., put them in there, and it's really easy then for retailers to grab your information off there. Or if you have a rep, or if you're contacting them, you can say, you can check out our profile and RangeMe, kind of like the LinkedIn for your products. If you're going for a job, right, you might get someone to your LinkedIn page. Well, in this case, go and see my RangeMe. They can get all their questions answered on that page, and it's a really great tool. So if you have interest in going into retail, definitely plan to make RangeMe part of your strategy. So then you've made the partnership, you're in the store, you're selling, this is fantastic. What do you do next? So how do you make sure that the product is going to be successful once you're in the store? Well, there's a couple things you're going to have to do, because part of the contract is to create some promotions. So you're going to have to do that, and you're going to check in quarterly in the beginning. And it's funny because they say, well, we want you to check in at least quarterly, probably monthly, but don't bug us. And be proactive, but not overly proactive. So it's kind of, again, you're probably a small fish in a big pond when it comes to these stores. So you want to be accessible and you want to check in, but you also have to know what your sales are. And if you're a smaller brand, you can't expect the buyers to give you necessarily as much attention as if you're coming in as, the top tequila in the market versus a new startup brand. But know your sales and know how they're doing, know if they're going as planned, or if you need some help, or if they're trending way above expectations. That's good. It gives you a little bit of leverage. Setting up these promotions in store. Again, these are alcohol. This is one we did with Laird Hamilton's line of superfoods. And the cool thing about that, if you know who Laird Hamilton is, he's a very famous surfer, and his wife, Gabrielle Reese, is a famous volleyball player. And they created this line of superfoods. And so when we did a promotion with them at Lazy Acres, they actually gave away surfboards. And so they created this display that they hung surfboards from the ceiling. And it was very eye-catching. It was the coolest promotion. And then they had this other promotion they did with us on social media where you could win dinner at Laird and Gabby's beach house in Hermosa Beach. And so they came up with some cool stuff because we were the first grocery store to carry them. most of their sales were online, so they didn't necessarily even need that grocery presence, but for them, it was a huge brand builder. So creating those promotions, and then we're going to talk about press, but if you have a big press hit or a big story that is done, you're going to want to definitely let your retail partners know. So maybe you shoot them a copy of the article in their email, or maybe it's something you even bring in to a display, etc., or the little, packaging, as featured on the Today Show, things like that. That's really important. It lends the cachet to your product. Let's talk about essential marketing elements, because there's really two things when it comes to marketing. There's marketing elements, and then there's essential marketing elements. So one of the most essential marketing elements that you can have as a retail brand is your brand story. And that is what differentiates you from the rest. And so maybe it's something to do with why you're starting a shop, or why you want to have this children's boutique. Because when I was a mom, I could never find affordable clothing for my children, and they wore it out, and I was a single mom. And so having those kind of brand stories really tells people what you're passionate about. There's also, even things if you're selling casters, that the story of how durable casters came about lends credibility to you and to the company and the people, in the story. It allows you to get the story out of who you work with, and you're working with some of the big guys, so that's great. When you have a maker's product, even if it's something handcrafted like furniture, you'll want to be able to tell that story of the furniture, but also the brand story. So when we were working with Real Wellness, the CEO of the company is a guy called Ricky Williams. And do any of you follow football? I'm fanatical about my football. So if you do, does anyone want to take a guess at who Ricky Williams is? Does anyone know Ricky Williams? He is, or was, a running back at University of Texas and a first-round NFL draft pick. A really incredible football talent, but he's also a person who all throughout his career was a pot smoker, and he utilized pot to reduce his pain. He was in a lot of pain his whole career. Unfortunately, at the time, it was illegal to do so, and he ended up essentially getting kicked out of the NFL. And it really was a horrible story, but what Ricky did is he went and got his PhD in Chinese herbalism and became an herbalist. And he started mixing CBD and THC with these herbal products to create this new line, and eventually decided to move the company into CBD only, just because THC is a little harder to sell retail. But he has the coolest story, because now he's got all this redemption. Now that people are starting to understand that marijuana is successful in pain relief. And as Ricky always would say in his interviews, they were trying to give me opiates and all these highly addictive drugs. And I was saying, no, I found something that works for me, but you won't let me take it. So he had this amazing story, and it's gone on. Ricky now, they just named Texas Stadium after him at the University of Texas. Like, he really is kind of on this redemption tour. But when we went out with this new brand, everyone wanted to hear his story, and everyone wanted to know about the products, because he just had such an interesting backstory. And obviously not everyone is going to be a famous athlete behind, is going to have a famous athlete behind their brand, but he could have been, there was another CBD brand at the same time that Rob Gronkowski launched. And it just felt very inauthentic. They hired a big PR firm in New York to tell the story, and it just sort of fizzled, because it's like, this guy's in the NFL right now. We know that he's not taking this stuff because he can't, because it's banned still. And he's just kind of a paid spokesperson, versus Ricky, who's really living it. So that's kind of the difference that you can tell in these stories. So when you create these stories, this woman, Sylvie, is a doctor at UCSF, and she had a child that was diabetic and created this sweetener with a low glycemic index called Just Date. And it's really awesome. We wrote about her for Lazy Acres and we featured her as a vendor because she had such a cool story. And this syrup is really amazing. I see your cat there. Daria. It was cute. She has just a really cool story. She born this product out of just trying to make a better life for her child. And it's really a great product. And then there's a local, this local family, they have this brand called Lotus. And I don't know if you've seen these, but they're these foldable dividers that go in your shopping cart, and you can put your produce here and your frozen foods here, and then you just pick them up and they replace bags. It's very cool. And they got their brand story out there on a national basis. I don't know if they were on Shark Tank, but I just feel like I see them everywhere. And that really helped them get included at a lot of different stores. So not everyone is going to have this amazing brand story, but if you do, or you can create an interesting authenticity to your brand, that goes a long way, because people really want authentic brands. So start with that. Now, the rest of the story, the rest of the marketing elements is going to just be, it depends. People often ask, how much money should I spend on marketing? And the answer always is, it depends. We have a rule of thumb in the marketing handbook that says 3 to 5% of your gross sales should go towards marketing. But when you're a small company, 3 to 5% of nothing is nothing, and you can't spend nothing on marketing. So you have to kind of understand what your market is, where you're going to be selling, to really understand what to spend money on. One of my retailers that I talked to said that they felt it's very, very important to work with smart people and consultants, but learn it yourself. So in the beginning, you're going to be hiring people to help you do things, but you always want to be learning. People are going to be creating your website, let's say, but if you can learn how to do it, you can go in and make those changes yourself, and you're not always going to have to be paying people. So try to find a balance there. Figure out what's important to you. There's a great website. If any of you worked with a website called Fiverr, it's Fiverr. You should definitely go there and look at it. It's a website where you can source graphic design, all sorts of video, etc., for really cheap. It started off, you pay $5 for things. Pay a little more than that. But if you need a logo for something, you can get it. You can get really beautiful sales sheets made, etc., for really inexpensive. It's hit or miss. They don't always do the job exactly that you want, but it's a great way to get started. It's Fiverr.com. It's a lot of people from other countries that are on there. Yeah. And you kind of fill out the form like you want, and then within like 48 hours, they send it back to you. So it's a great, inexpensive way to start on your marketing. But you might not want to do that for your company logo if that's going to be really key. You may want to spend the money on a logo and then go to Fiverr or a more inexpensive way to more inexpensive source to do flyers or sell sheets or whatever else you need. But do proactive promotions. So you're going to make sure that you are out there with your product, whether it be on social media, and we'll talk about that, or whether it be online, or whether you're promoting it on your personal sites. You need to have a presence out there, and it needs to be proactive. Getting an email list, to me, is the easiest, cheapest way to start promoting your retail product. And that a lot of people thought when social media first came out that email was going to go by the wayside, but email opens and engagements are actually going up, and it's just one more tool in that toolbox for marketing. And it's cheap and or free, perhaps, if you can go in there on MailChimp or something like that and create templates and start gathering email lists. That's really a good way to start. You want to be seasonal and fun with your promotions. So this is a group called Drops of Dough. They do homemade cookie dough. It's really amazing. And they give 10% of their profits to pediatric cancer research, because they started the company based as a tribute to a friend's daughter who had cancer. And so they have a cool story. They started as online only, and they do these really great seasonal fun promotions for every holiday. They did a lot of really cool COVID packs where you could write a message and they would print it. And now they're starting to get into retail locations as well. So they're doing both. But they always have really great seasonal promotions, and they made their brand fun. And I think most of our brands are pretty fun. So make sure that your marketing keeps that in mind. You want to court PR, and what that means is you don't have to hire a PR agency or get onto the news, but you should know what things are out there that are relative to your industry. If there is let's say there's a National Infant Safety Day. Well, maybe you're the person that sends out, hey, here's some tips for keeping your baby's clothing safe. These are brought to you by, Huggies Kids Boutique or whatever it's called. Or if you're doing the bridal store, there's a million bridal holidays. Let's say it's International Proposal Day, which is a thing. Maybe you're the person that is providing some statistics to your local paper or news, or putting them out on social media, just to kind of tie in with some of those fun things and to keep yourself top of mind. We worked with a mattress company, and they always had these tips for better sleep. And then she ended up getting a local news station to come and interview her. She became like the sleep expert. What pillow should I choose if I snore? Those kind of things. Like, she always would be writing blogs about that. And then people would find her shop that way. And then having a great social presence. Not everybody is comfortable doing that. Not everybody will have it, but these are just an example. This is a product these are resin-based photos and artwork, cutting boards, etc. They're based in San Clemente, and they have 15,000 followers on their Instagram. So if I was a gift shop and they came to me and said, will you carry our product? And I looked on that Instagram, I would be like, heck yeah, I'll carry your product, because you already have followers that like your work. And now you're trying to open a different sales channel, and that's terrific. So making sure that you have your social media. If you have a product that is consumer facing, B2B as well is important. If you're starting up a consultancy or something, now I guess that's not really a retail product, but it's important that you have some kind of a presence out there. And if you're not comfortable doing it, there's a lot of people out there that do it pretty inexpensively. Partnerships, again, if you're not comfortable doing certain things, there's people out there that are, and they're good at it, and a lot of businesses like to partner. So let's say you need photos of your products for your website, and you might partner with a photographer who is in need of a couch. And so if you're selling furniture, you can maybe work out a trade or a discount. Think about people. The people at the Aloha Bungalow were telling me they did a trade for everything. They're like, every person that we knew that had, I'm trying to think of some of the things they told me. Every person they knew that did anything, they were trading with them. They had a person that had, was a band promoter, so they had them get live music for their store, etc., in exchange for some candles. And so be creative about what you can trade as you're starting up and how you can create those partnerships. And then other marketing elements that will be important. If you're in a business that you're going to be asking for investment, you want to make sure that you have really high quality investment materials. You want to have a pitch deck for investors. You want to have bios, etc. And then again, those are things that it may be best to outsource, because you can't really get that wrong if you get in front of the right investment. So let's say you have a beauty product and you are trying to get an investment from a larger cosmetic company. You have one shot at that pitch. So start thinking about, as you level up, what are the things that you might need to sell your business and take it to the next level, or to establish investors so you can scale. Are trade shows dead? That's a good question. I don't think they are dead. I think for certain industries, they're still really important. We work a lot with the franchise industry, with restaurants, and they have a lot of great trade shows there. The natural products industry trade shows are really big. I would imagine automotive trade shows. What's the big trade show they have in Las Vegas for all of the, where Apple always introduces their new products? Consumer something. Anyway, I think after COVID, they're coming back bigger than ever. And so, that's another way that you can differentiate yourself with marketing and the things that you're going to do at that trade show. How do you tell a brand story? Do you introduce a video, etc.? I want to show you a couple of other tools and links and then open up for some more questions. And so these are, let me see if I can get a new share, a couple of resources. And again, there's so much resource on the front end or research on the front end that has to go into these products. But luckily, you have a fantastic resource. And Daria is going to be sending this out at the end of the chat as well, and a transcript of the recording, or a recording, and also the presentation to her as well. But SCORE and the SBA are amazing. Carlsbad and Miracosta partner for the SBDC, which is the Small Business Development Center. And if you have a product you're trying to launch or business, they have a lot of different courses. There's even like a 16-week course that you can take there where I think you end up getting a grant for your business if you pass it, because they're trying to set you up for success. So I highly recommend these. I work with SCORE as a mentor. So if you are starting a marketing business, then maybe I might have a consultation with you. It's all free. And I mentor you about where to start your business, etc., what kind of things you should be spending money, or I look at your balance sheet and I can help you with figuring out where to spend. There's an exercise. Well, let me just show you these really quickly. Sorry about that. I'll open these and then I'll just show you them quickly so you get a sense of what's there, and I hope you will utilize some of them. So this one is a SCORE workshop, and this is about choosing a location for retail business. So if you're looking at real estate, this has a lot of really great questions, and you can also download a worksheet. This is a branding exercise that we use at our company when somebody is first defining their brand and talking about the brand promise, competitive analysis. It's kind of those questions we talked about at the beginning, but it puts it in a little bit more detail. And things like, if you had to associate your company with a one-word statement, what would it be? And I love talking about this. If your brand was a person, who would it be? It's all really like touchy-feely marketing stuff, but it's a great exercise because you start thinking in the mind of a consumer and who is your brand. I think, a great example from our meeting today in terms of who could use this would probably be Matt, because you're doing the skateboard decks, right? So if you're doing a skateboard deck, it's pretty easy to say, who would your brand be? And I don't know if you're comfortable sharing that or if you want to, but who would it be? Would it be Tony Hawk? Would it be Nyjah? Would it be somebody really young, like the little Brazilian girl that won the gold medal? Or would it be all of them? And so figuring out those brand descriptions is really important relative to, and you can tear photos out of magazines or find things online. And then there's also a list of values and motivators for your brand. And so you can go through and pick those out. So it's a helpful exercise to do. I always recommend doing it with friends or your team, and it kind of becomes a brainstorming. And then this is really cool. SCORE puts together a business plan template for a startup business. It's really long, it's 34 pages, but it's incredibly helpful in terms of being able to lay out your business plan. And so you can go through that. It has everything from your legal requirements to your manufacturing information, suppliers, etc. So that is also a helpful tool. I think all of those are really helpful in terms of just getting that information out there and understanding before you start all of the pitfalls of starting a retail business. So let me just finish by saying, I'll take some questions. This is my information. If you do have any questions, I also have a Miracosta email, but I put my work one on here because that's usually easier to get a hold of me. And I would absolutely love to answer your questions that way. Or if any of you have questions here or have any specifics that you want to share, I'm more than happy to take them in the chat, or you can just ask them. So thank you guys so much for attending. And I wish you a lot of luck. I hope we have the next Shark Tank fidget spinner creator here.